and welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast, authentic chat about medicines, pharmacy and healthcare in the UK.
Pharmacists Jamie, Gimmo and STC take on topical and controversial stories but keep it edgy yet light-hearted.
Pod guests share their career-defining drug, song and book, and also share their joyful patient stories.
Welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast. My name is Sarah Cripps, and for this 5th anniversary episode, I'm joining the 3 apothecaries as they reflect on 5 years of the Oral Apothecary Podcast. So let's welcome the 3 apothecaries. STC is in Bournemouth, Gimmo is in Cardiff, and Jamie is in Penarth. Welcome. Happy birthday.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday to us.
Now, I feel very honoured, by the way, to be hosting. Thank you so much. And I had a loose brief, but you were quite clear on one thing, and that was about not wanting to be congratulatory or actually self-congratulatory. But I do think this milestone has to be acknowledged in some way. So I'm kind of ignoring the brief in part.
We don't want any AI sycophancy. That's what we don't want.
There'll be no AI sycophancy, I promise you. Because you started it in lockdown, and there are so many podcasts that started in lockdown. And not only is yours still running, it's getting stronger and better. And I heard Jamie say on a recent episode, Jamie, I think you said you're reaching 80 countries. And so for me, as somebody who listens to every episode, you're welcome. I'm really impressed by quite a few things. But the one thing that stands out for me as well is you've got a formula, and the formula hasn't really changed, apart from a brief cease and desist moment, but we can park that. So I think it's fantastic what you've achieved, and the fact that you've kind of stuck to the knitting, if you like, and grown it. And so I think it's absolutely commendable. So, but I also think it says a lot about your personalities, that you're very humble and it's not about praising for the sake of it. So if it's okay, and I know you want to be a reflective piece, so I'd like to take you right back to the beginning, because your audience has grown, your listenership has grown, and not everybody will be aware of the beginnings. And I don't know the true beginnings. All I know is that you started in lockdown. So how did the idea begin? Who started it?
I don't know who started it, but I remember me and you, Jamie, having a couple of conversations probably a year before lockdown, I would say, about a podcast. And so we'd bounce the ideas around, and that was where then you said about your mate Steve and his interest in journey and change of career, and he'd be really good on it. And
Did he say that?
And I think you two may have had conversations as well. So I think it started there, really. And funny enough, we were, as part of sort of a bit of self-reflection, I was looking at we got a couple of things behind the scenes here. One's a WhatsApp group, one's a Google folder. And there's some documents in there that sort of showed the origins of it as well, didn't they? And it was our brief to ourselves was not to self-flagellate. So we listened to a lot of medicines and pharmacy podcasts, and they were either bemoaning the state of pharmacy, or when they were about medicines, they were just sort of CPD type stories, or they just weren't any fun. And so I think we set ourselves a target of just doing something that we enjoy and we are proud of. And actually, to bring us full circle, me and Jane went last week to an event about podcasts where they were talking about metrics and how you judge success. And of course, it was all about ad income and numbers. And people have asked us, why have you never had ads, and what's your numbers, and why don't you share them? And our metric has been to produce, well, you call it, don't you, Jamie, a work of art, but our metric has been to produce something we're proud of and to enjoy ourselves. And I think that's one of the reasons we've lasted 5 years, is because we've never strayed from that, really. I don't know if the other two want to come in.
Before they come in, because that's just triggered another question for me, and I think it's another thing that's important to point out here, that This is your passion project. It's a side hustle. There's no sponsorship really, from, big names or anything like that. It's something, you've got really busy lives, you've got busy careers, and yet you still commit time to doing this without any income generation. I think that's to be applauded, and that you've got that passion in there. But do you think you have any plans long term to try and attract sponsorship? Question number one. Question number two, who would be your dream sponsor, and would it be aligned to those ethics and values?
We have talked about that, but as you said, we don't want to give up editorial rights. We want to say what we want to say. And so apart from the fact that it happens to be sponsored by my side hustle, One Less Pill, and Jamie's side hustle, Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching, if it happened organically and it felt right, maybe we would, but I'm not sure that we ever would. What do you think, Joe?
The closest we came, I suppose, was when, and I bumped into this gentleman last week at dinner, was when Wigs and Pens sent us some very nice fountain pen merchandise. If you want to have some brilliant pens, they're made to order from some stunning pieces of wood and craft. I bumped into David Bentley Miller, who, if you go on social media, you'll see him crafting the pens. He's a lawyer by day and makes these pens by night. But yeah, we nearly got something going, and that would have been a great sponsor, because a medical healthcare pharmacy audience, they love some stationery, as do the legal world, and so that would have been a good fit. But I'll take you back, Sarah, to how it started, because I can remember one thing prior. So give me when I remember a cup of coffee in the centre of Cardiff. But I can remember a conversation. It was me and Gimmo. We were in Cardiff Bay. We were right outside the Pierhead building. It was a blowy day down there. And I said to him, and that's where I sort of said, I've got a podcast about medicines and the stories behind them. And I think I said to him, I'd be interested, for example, of what Jamie Roberts thinks of medicines. So that's the Welsh and British Lion rugby player who's now gone back into medicine. And that's where it's sort of our first conversation about it. And then we took it to a few coffees, and then got Steve involved as well.
Hey, you wouldn't be our first rugby player, would he? We've had John Devereux on, seeing as that this is going British out in the Six Nations, Annex Rugby League, British Rugby League, and British Lions. So yeah, that was a bit of a coup. I remember that.
And then Sarah, can I play a piece? Look, I've put a few clips together. I'll play one piece because it's come up already. And just have a listen to this.
I'm pleased to tell you that although I don't have the little R yet, I one Sunday afternoon thought, what the hell? And so I applied to the Intellectual Property Office to trademark Desert Island Drugs. So I'm hoping that in a couple of months' time, if the BBC doesn't object because of Desert Island Discs, and there's also a Desert Island Desserts podcast, but if they don't object, Desert Island Drugs is ours.
And we know what happened next.
Yeah, well
we?
done.
We do, but I'm hosting, so I'm going to take you back a bit more, because I think there's more of a story to tell here. So you were approached, Steve. So Jamie pitched it to you and said, Gimmo and I have been talking, and I think I'm right in thinking that you didn't know Gimmo.
That is right.
So what was your first reaction when Jamie came to you with the idea?
I think I was bowled over, wasn't I, Jamie? I mean, I like to talk, don't I? I mean, we've all got an opinion, but, when it comes to medicines, it is my passion. I've spent my life doing it. My dad was a pharmacist. So, and I'd done a bit of, as you know, I'd been on Radio Lim, Steve the Chemist's morning medicine show. So I was bowled over when he asked me. I didn't care who it was with, is the honest answer. And then Gimmo and I didn't meet in person for about 18 months. Is that right, Gimmo?
We met the first time I think we met you, Sarah, which was at, the first time I met you, which was at Jamie Brewster and the live show in Cardiff. I'm sure that was the first time we met in person, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So how did the formula come about? This brilliant formula that you have.
So we did test a few things. So there's the mythical first episode that hasn't been aired with Professor Andrew Morris of Swansea University.
I listened to the pilot episode today.
And we tried a feature which didn't make the cut, which was if you had to be a drug, what drug would it be, or something like that. And it was just a bit too complex, but the book and the song worked. But what I must admit, I was surprised when I looked at our initial plan and it stood the test of time. The script we had for the very second episode with Claire is pretty much exactly the same script that we stuck to. And we tried a few variations to try and mix it up. We had the oral apothecary analyzers, didn't we? And we've tried to have some sort of a multi-guest format. But actually, we keep coming back, and people have said to us about the live shows. How do you do the live shows without a script? And it's because the formula does the work for us. You know, asking people questions about medicines essentially, and the stories, and the rest just flows. And as long as we stay calm and collected, I think it's because the original concept, that idea of medicines and stories, is so good. I think that's what's worked.
So listen, in preparation for this podcast, I listened when we went on somebody else's podcast. Jonathan Laird was one of our guests in the first series, and he had his own podcast called Pharmacy in Practice. So he asked us on, and he asked us some of these questions. And this is what I heard today. Apparently, Jamie, you said to Gimmo that I used this thing called desert island drugs and dirty, useless drugs when we teach in the polypharmacy action learning sets.
Yeah.
And Gimmo said, "Oh, I love that. I'm going to nick that immediately." And so that's where that particular part of the trio of things that we asked for came from. And people constantly will tell us what, if they're fans, they will tell us what their desert island drug would be and their career anthem and their book choice. So yeah, it just works. And the stories flow, don't they?
Absolutely they do. And I love that bit. I get to it because that's like the human story of it, isn't it? Oh, what's their story and what's their connection? So you mentioned medicines there and pharmacy, and you mentioned quite a lot. You're quite clear in that this is a medicines podcast, not a pharmacy podcast. So why is that?
Jamie, I think you should answer that.
Well, I'll step in first, Sarah. So my career, Sarah, has been, I am a pharmacist, and I'm proud and I love the profession, but my career has been predominantly working with prescribers, medical colleagues generally, family physicians, general practitioners. And so that's where my area of interest has been. It's been around the therapeutics and the medicine and the evidence-based medicine, and as a pharmacist. And I was one of the early, the job that Steve is doing now in practice, I was one of the early adopters of pharmacists in general practice. But yeah, most of my career has been working alongside medical colleagues on the medicines rather than pharmacy. And I don't find pharmacy particularly interesting, but medicines are fascinating.
Yeah, and I often say that I find that if pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, they can get a bit too uni-professional, and actually it really misses the point of patient care if you're not working in a team. And like Jamie said, medicines then transcend. So whether you're the doctor, the pharmacist, the nurse, the paramedic, medicines is a language that we all understand.
Great, love that. And also for me, I'm not in your world. I'm not in pharmacy or medicines, but we all know we take medication. We know people who take medication. So it's that interest, isn't it? That is there for everybody. Now I've only picked up one theme to pick up the 5th anniversary. And so I thought it would be quite good to ask the three of you. 5 doesn't divide by 3, but I'm going to ask you for just to summarise and using 5 words collectively to describe your greatest learnings or reflections in the last 5 years. Now, because Jamie is the absolute master of using less words that has the most impact, I'm going to give Jamie 1 word, but Gimmo and STC, no offence, but you're allowed 2 because I think you'd struggle with 1. So I don't know who wants to go first.
So I'll go patients. This journey has made me a better clinician or a better health professional.
Wow.
And I'd like to hope that maybe certainly the health professionals that listen in some small way, we might have helped them as well. But, I always joke that if you just broke me open like a stick of rock, you would find patient around the middle of me. And really all that we do, well, for me anyway, as a clinician, everything I'm thinking about is how will that help me with the next patient that I speak to? And I think the most powerful thing we did in the 5 years was the series that we did with patients and patient advocates. And it really set me even more in my desire to be all about patients. And we don't want to pick out our favorite episodes, but I am going to pick out one particular thing, which was Graham Prestwich from Me and My Medicines, who I'd met a few times. And he was the first patient that we had on in our group, as in our series, sorry. And he talked about patients are project managers, and he's been using that terminology for nearly 10 years now. And he just absolutely nails it every time he says it. And he talks about support us and then trust us to get on with managing our medicines. And I've taken that, and in my own work now, in some work that I did with the Health Innovation, for example, we wrote a document called The Mechanics of Overprescribing and Problematic Polypharmacy. And we involved Graham and Lawrence Brad and Claire Howard and Lely Obo, who'd also been a guest. And I took that idea and came up with this analogy, which I stick to now and use a lot, which is the analogy of a car, and the idea that the patient is the driver, the car is the body, and we are merely mechanics. And most people, I think, can get to grips with buying and running a car and understanding the bits that go with it and the bits you need to do for yourself, as well as taking it in for your MOT, i.e. your medicines MOT, for your medication review. So that has stuck with me all the way along, and I've now used it consistently in how I think and how I try to do, not just in consultations, but in the work that I do outside for strategic and regional and national stuff.
Brilliant. Now, you do have a second word, STC. If you don't want to use it, I will give it to Jamie.
I'll pass.
Oh,
Okay,
Jamie,
well,
I've got 2
I've
words.
got 3, or I can do 3. I mean, maybe we could come back to favourite episodes, or not favourite episodes, but I had a few things to say about that series on patients as well, and Graham Prestwich and the patient as a project manager was one of them. That's one of the things that stuck with me throughout. I think one of my words would be conversation. So we started this, and the clear brief was it was a pub-based chat, and it was what we were missing in lockdown. It was that, but actually, when you listen to the episodes, conversation is the solution that we come up with a lot of the time. You know, making sure that we're talking to patients, to clinicians, making sure that communication is there. And I did I was looking at the episodes and the themes throughout the 5 years, and there's been a subtle shift from focusing on drugs, individual drugs, to more focusing on systems. And so systems would be my other word, because that's the other thing we often touch on, is the importance of system thinking. And one of the things that this pod has brought for me is it's connected me back with the pharmacy and medicines world, because my day job, it doesn't really centre around medicines in the sense that any job in healthcare does. But so systems is where the world of the oral apothecary and my world of work overlap. And if I did have a third word, if you want me to bail you out, James, it's curiosity, because I think that's...
You didn't give, I'm in control, Gimmer. You didn't give me the power to say yes or no.
Okay.
Carry on. Curiosity.
All right, thank you. Yeah, curiosity, because one of the things in systems thinking is about being curious and asking questions and investigating. And I think that's what we've got better at as the series has gone on. But it's also, I think, a good trait for clinicians to have, is that curiosity.
I just went on another podcast in the last couple of weeks, Scottish users group for IT, and I described myself as a curious pragmatist. And again, I think that comes from all of those things that you said. And with regard to systems, I don't know whether you're going to pick this word, Jamie, but under the systems, and it's a theme that we come back to time and time again, which is failure demand. And that is quite clearly an issue to do with systems. And my second word when I was thinking about it was failure demand, but we'll take systems. And they talk a lot in the NHS now about productivity and how productivity is poor and we need to improve productivity. And you shout at the TV or the radio, you know, people are not tins of beans. That's usually what I'm shouting. But actually, the more I've thought about it and the more I've heard, and it all started with Jamie's original book choice from Professor John Seddon. And I'm now beginning to think that unlocking the big F is the key to the big P. So unlocking failure demand in the NHS is actually, I think, one of the keys to improving productivity. And so we had some brilliant episodes with John Seddon and also Ben Allen, the GP, around this very subject. So I think it goes to the heart that everything that we go to.
Okay, so Jamie's waiting very patiently, but I just want to explore a little bit further with you, Steve, about failure demand. Because some people might be listening and thinking, oh, it's another buzz phrase. What is the essence of failure demand and why is it so important?
The idea is that it's a demand on your time that is only a demand on your time because of the failure of the original connection with somebody else has failed. So it's created additional work, whereas if the first person was able to deal with it, and so John Seddon puts this beautifully, and let's be honest, he doesn't mince his words, and in the podcast episode, 7.3, he basically says, look, I don't blame DPs, the system's shit. And so his point is that you see it everywhere. Once you understand it, you see that all the additional work that's being created, again, Jamie uses the word progress chasing. So you're constantly, if you look at what you're doing and you think to yourself, has this come to me because some other part of the system has failed and now it's ended up on my plate? That's failure demand.
And actually, funny enough, when we did the episode, we had a couple of people saying, we really enjoyed that episode, but what's failure demand? And we thought, okay. So we did put a little explainer in, which maybe we could put it in here now as a little audio clip, unless Jamie's got it to hand. Because you did a little explainer for it, didn't you, Jamie?
Yeah, I won't do it now. I did the garage explainer. But
yeah,
that's right.
To go alongside failure demand, Sarah, is if everybody treats all demand as work, they're missing the point. You've got to, we should be analysing the demand, and you'll find it's a mixture of value demand, which is what we want, and failure demand, which in a decent system wouldn't be there. And you can look, and some people's jobs end up being purely on failure demand, which is a heart-destroying, sort of soul-destroying place to be working when you realise that you're working on a job that in a decent system shouldn't exist.
Here's a little example that may come under failure demand, and it may not be, and it's a very small example, but this is what's come to mind. So Coops' mom has had a letter arrive, but it was dated the 14th for an appointment on the 19th. All post is sent second class. So guess when she got it? The appointment was then cancelled. So she phoned them to say, look, obviously this has arrived too late. She's all irate and anxious. And they said, sorry, because you've missed an appointment, we can't make you another one.
That's barn door failure demand.
So that's still failure demand.
Yes,
I've understood correctly on a very small, mind level understanding. Thank you.
But it shows the human cost of failure demand as well, because the mistake to think is that failure demand is just about saving efficiencies and monies, but there's a real human cost to it as well.
Go on, James. Give the explainer about doing
wrong. Yeah, so this is all John's work, Professor John Seddon, and as a result of the podcast, look, this is Connection and alumni. Myself, John, and Professor Neil Mascray, we've just had a bit of fun published really in the British Journal of General Practice on wizards and gatekeepers, and there's a few articles in the pipeline which will be on John's work in a slightly more light-hearted way. But yeah, doing wrong things righter.
Doing wrong things righter.
The last thing just to say on that is that I think we're all quite excited that somebody called Nick Downham, who wrote a book with a guy called Murray Anderson Wallace called Improving Quality in Healthcare. He seems to be now one of the leading people talking about failure demand, and he'd posted on LinkedIn that he had just been to the Health Foundation, which is a big think tank in healthcare. And it sounds like there's a document coming about how to deal with failure demand, which I'm sure would make John Seddon and all of us very happy. So I'm going to say that unlocking the big F is the key to the big P.
It takes a lot to keep John happy.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's optimistic.
That's ambitious.
But, if ever there's a great reflection, that if that's just the one thing that's been achieved in the 5 years that you've been doing the pod, which it isn't, there's lots more, then how fantastic is that? You're really making a difference. Right, Jamie, poor Jamie, always very patient. How do you cope, Jamie, with these
Sarah, it's interesting listening to what Steve and Gimmo have come up with, because I too have highlighted the Patient series 5, and I've again got some clips for us to listen to. It is fair to say when we first started, and I think that we benefited from this, when we first started, I had patients and the lay public in mind. Steve had more professionals in mind, and Gimmo was in the middle, sort of adjusting and balancing on the two. And that's why I think we produced something that is listenable for many people. Medicines have a huge impact on people's lives. I did a session for the Women's Institute on Monday night locally. It's the context of patients' daily lives. I did a session for 200 pharmacists in Sri Lanka on Friday afternoon. Again, it's the same messages. So have a listen to this clip that from one of my favourite episodes, and then we'll come back.
CF's part of my life, but it's also my whole life. It's hard not to let it take over, but it's one of those things you just get used to. I guess it's all I've ever known.
So how do you explain it to others when you have to let people know that you're a person with cystic fibrosis?
I usually start with it's not contagious, because that's one thing that people always think, because it's something to do with my lungs. So when I cough a lot, people think I'm going to spread it and whatever. So I start with that. I explain usually that it's to do with my lungs, but it's to do with all my other organs as well. It's just, it affects my lungs more. So I do spend a lot of time coughing. I take a lot of medicines every day. I do lots of physio for my chest. It doesn't affect, it doesn't ruin my life or anything. It's always been there, but it takes up a lot of my life. And people have described, and I agree, it's like a second job. So imagine you're having 2 full-time jobs and one you can never leave. It doesn't go away on my birthday or Christmas or on holidays. I have to take it all with me. So it's a lot of work, but I think if you've got a good team and a good support system, you can cope with it.
One of the things that one of our previous guests, Graham Press, which I think it was, one of the terms he used was, he said that having a chronic disease, you almost need a project manager. And so he's saying, he describes the patient as the project manager, and I think that's what you're describing there. That's another great analogy, one for you, Steve, there, isn't it? That, being ill is like having a second job.
So that was Louise Jenkins from Series 5. When we aired that episode, lots of people got in touch to say what an amazing woman.
Yeah.
She's the only guest as well that came on and said, right, I'm going out partying now after we finished recording.
As we go to bed.
But yeah, just that. And so my word was stories, Sarah.
Stories.
Yeah, my word was stories.
It's interesting with that one, the one that you just played, but when they have somebody famous who died, and everybody, like my dad, I can remember where my dad was when Elvis died, but I can remember the route in the car listening to that episode, and I played it again because she was just so incredible, wasn't she? So sorry, Gimmo.
No, I was going to say that was on my list as well. It was it's an incredible episode for a number of reasons, but purely from a nerdy pharmaceutical point of view as well, it's the drug that changed her life is one of the few miracle drugs I think that's come along in our lifetime, because it completely changed how she managed her cystic fibrosis, didn't it? And had a massive impact on as well. And I remember shortly after that episode, the news came out that NICE might not approve that drug for use. And I can remember having quite a visceral reaction to it, whereas normally I've been quite logical about NICE, but I had quite a reaction to it, because I thought that just can't be right. And thankfully they didn't go with it in the end.
So your guests have had an impact on you, and they've had an impact on, many people. I've actually stolen 2 of your guests as well for my own podcast. Thank you.
Say the name, Sarah. You didn't say it at the beginning. Let people know.
Professor Claire, and I can't remember. I'm so rubbish with names, but Jamie will tell me who it was.
Of your podcast.
Yeah. Oh, my podcast. Oh, it's not about me. It's about you guys.
We'll come back to that at the end.
No, it's fine. So you've had lots of feedback. Is there one piece of feedback that really took you by surprise in a good way, that really validated what you were doing? I'm coming to Jamie first.
The most surprising bit of feedback initially, Sarah, was people asking me to record bedtime stories for them.
You do have a beautiful voice.
That was all a bit unexpected and a bit weird.
Depends what age group they were, Jamie. How old were they? Yeah. Were these
We didn't follow up. No, we've had some lovely feedback, some really meaningful feedback, which people have said, I've changed jobs as a result of listening to you. The connections through our alumni have put people on different career paths. And then the patient, again, it's the patient episodes, really. It's just listening to those patient episodes to see what it means and how they describe it. And so the patient stories and the patients are more interesting than us and our colleagues. That's for certain. Because I've gone back and listened to that series, and it blows me away. It really does.
The other word I was going to give you was mental health. Okay, and we've spent 5 years or so doing this, and during that time, and since I've worked in general practice, I've become to realise just how prevalent mental health is, whether it's low-level anxiety, depression, to something more serious. And we've had some brilliant episodes with Karen Sankey. We had the inverse care law. We've had Rachel Elliott talking about mental health and health inequality, which is another thing that comes across time and time again, and you'll hear us talk about. And Jamie, we used to joke with Jamie early on about Julian Tudor Hart, but eventually, look, episode 7.7, we did the inverse care law. And it's not just about mental health, but what you realise is that there is mental health issues are rife around people who've got chronic conditions. And during this journey, I, for the record, because Sarah is a podcaster, and she asked me to go on her podcast, and then I actually spoke about it on this podcast. And at the time it was called Big Balance Theory, wasn't it? And you asked me on, and we got into a conversation about me talking about my anxiety and how I had been suffering with anxiety, which I'd never suffered from before. And I then mentioned it in one of our episodes and probably said, if you're interested, go and listen. And we were at the Royal Pharmaceutical Society conference. We had our banner up and we were stood there waiting. And this lady just came up to me and she said, Steve, you don't know me, but I need to tell you that what you said on the podcast was so helpful, because I also have been suffering with my mental health. And it's really good that we get to hear that people who you think wouldn't have issues around anxiety or depression are actually talking about it. And that really took my breath away.
Well done. That's great feedback, isn't it? Great. Gimo, any one piece of feedback that is the most memorable for you that springs to mind?
Jamie just alluded to it. It's not so much feedback as a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, was so impressed listening to Louise Newson and menopause and women's health and in general been a bit of a theme, and that's probably been a learning journey for us as well. And the episode of Louise Newson impacted us so much, she ended up working with her. so we helped to change someone's career path and in a good way, because I knew, she wasn't particularly happy before and didn't work and then was. So seeing that change in someone was amazing. And that, I don't know if it's solely down to us, but I think we can take some credit.
Yeah, I think there was a fair amount. She was very focused. She said, I want to work for that woman.
Yeah.
And she's been working with her for the last four years, is now very senior in the organisation and loves what she does.
And she went to your live event, she was there at your live at the chapter, wasn't she?
She was, yeah. Been to a few of them, yep.
Okay, so when you mentioned my podcast, and we've talked about feedback there, but I asked Jamie for advice on my podcast, and he asked me a really good question. And the question was, who would be your ideal guest on the pod? Now, you've had so many guests, even down to environmental impact of medicines, wastage and packaging from the patients. Is there anybody in mind that would be, that is the guest I would love to have on the podcast?
Straight in.
Yeah.
Atol Gwande.
And I would have said that as well. And we've emailed him several times.
And both of the book choices of myself and Gimo are both Atol Gwande books. And now we have to get one over on Jamie, because his book was Professor...
Which professor, Steve?
John Seddon. So he's one up on us. So yeah, definitely Atol Gwande for me.
So I probably would. Now you've said it, that's mine as well. But I think Professor Michael Marmot might come a close second, and we did approach him as well, didn't we?
Yeah. He actually said yes. but
He
just
did.
couldn't quite make it.
My fantasy guest would be Agatha Christie.
Okay.
There we go. Because I mean she's not a pharmacist, but she's a well, she wasn't quite a pharmacy technician, but she was in that ilk.
It's not a pharmacy
And
podcast.
But it was her use of medicines and poisons in the books that I think is just. I've read much more into it, and a few guests have picked Agatha Christie, or one has, and I've read a lot since, and I've read a book all about the poisons and the way she weaves medicines in. I mean, she probably hates us, to be honest, but because she's a bit of a snob, but I'd love to have a chat with her about medicines and where she got her ideas from.
And there's a celebrity guest out there that I think would be great, and he's in the news a lot at the moment. He's on the talk shows, he's on social media, and that's John Bishop.
Yes.
Because John Bishop used to be a pharmaceutical representative, and everybody wants to know about his comedy journey. And obviously, we're straying into pharma comedy so often nowadays. Wouldn't it be great to get John on and not talk about his comedy, but talk about his life and the skills that he learnt as the pharmaceutical rep?
What's stopping you from reaching
his
out to him?
website, Sarah? His website.
Yeah, okay.
His people.
His people.
Yeah.
But hasn't he just had a play about him or something?
There's a movie out about his about it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's some great guests on there.
Listen, if you asked us what was the bravest pick of a guest, I will give you, and it was still remains one of my favourite episodes, was Trevor Sylvester, who was an ex-Metropolitan Police officer who became a clinical hypnotherapist. And we had him on. I had to work long and hard on Jamie and Gimmo to clear that he could come on and talk about his use of psychedelic drugs, as in his personal use of psychedelic drugs. And so I think that was the bravest pick that I've managed to get through these two.
And it all went fine, didn't it?
On personal use, let me play another clip for you, because I think this brings the podcast as well. This really had meaning for me when I listened to this in Series 5. This is from Deborah Duval.
And for me, and we'll come on to that in a minute, I don't think a lot of the prescriptive drugs we have are treating the person, they're just treating the condition. But what I say is eat the best food you can possibly afford to buy, exercise, even if you just can walk to the end of your garden and back again. If you are prescribed to take some medication, look into it, understand why you're taking it, make sure you feel happy with it, but then bloody well take it, because you're not being prescribed it just for a joke. And I do know a lot of patients that just don't take medicine that they're prescribed.
So Deborah had 4 transplants when she came on, 3 kidney transplants and a pancreas. And then this is what she said then about her relationship with corticosteroids.
It goes back to something I alluded to earlier. If you ask health professionals, more so into secondary care, not primary care, when you are prescribing drugs for a patient, what are you? What's the aim? And most of them, I think there has been a survey, over 85% of them will say to treat a condition. And that shouldn't be the case, right? I want you to treat me. So I'll give you an example. So I have a pet hate. This is personal. This is not speaking on behalf of anybody else. I have a personal hate of the amount of steroids we use and that are prescribed to us. Like, I'm small. I wear, size 8, size 10 clothes. I cannot afford to go and buy a new wardrobe if you give me a drug that stimulates my appetite and I eat and eat and eat until I balloon out. I don't want a Cushingoid face. I don't want a drug that's diabetogenic, especially with my history. I don't want osteoporosis. I don't want thinning skin. I don't want a carcinogenic medication. So when I challenge that, I say, why have you prescribed these steroids for me to treat my transplant? And the answer, there are 2 stock answers which drive me a little bit loopy. And one is it's hospital protocol. That's not good enough. Not good enough. No. Secondly is because this will extend the life of your transplant. And neither of those answers are good enough, right? Because I want to live a quality of life, not a quantity of life.
So when I heard Deborah talk, me, Gimmo and Steve will have learnt in college, like all the other healthcare professionals, steroids have a long list of side effects, and we would have learnt those side effects, been examined on them, we remember them. But then when you hear somebody like Deborah say about I'm a size 8 and I can't afford to go and have to buy a new wardrobe. I just thought, again, that's the context of patients' daily lives. We will have just learnt that as, oh, that's a side effect. You'll put weight on with this. And probably leave it at that. And then to listen down to that impact in her life, again, that really stuck with me.
So I had that on my list as well, Jamie. So we've all had the same three. I had Graham, Louise and Deborah. And I remember what blew me away in that episode, it was just alluded to in that clip, was that we often talk about adherence or concordance or, you know, what can we do to motivate patients to take drugs and to take medicines as prescribed. And there we had someone who had the ultimate threat of losing a life-saving kidney, but still wasn't adherent with her medicines and was quite bullish about it as well. So she really blew me away. I think that's one of those episodes that I'd say students should listen to because it really gives an insight into patients' attitudes and beliefs about medicines.
Do you know how sometimes we have grandiose ideas because we haven't got anybody, going back to your point about we can do what we like. Well, we took all of those episodes from Series 5, and at the time there was a piece by the Times health journalist about what's wrong with the NHS and how to fix it. And we asked each of the people who came on in episode 5, and we ended up with what we like to call the NHS 75-year tonic. And do you know what? We made a bit of a play on it, and we had an image and we put it on social media. But when they asked last year for ideas for the NHS 10-year health plan, I sent in the Oral Apothecary NHS 75 ingredients, not provided by us, but provided by the 10 people that we had on Series 5.
And what was the response?
Zilch.
Well, it's very important.
That was on you, Steve.
That's impact for you, Sarah.
You came up with that idea, and it was a good idea.
Not all ideas get their just desserts, do they? You know, the medicines map is going to get there, but you know, maybe the tonic wasn't quite.
Well, maybe think of other audiences or ways that you can reach. But that's for a different. This is about your reflective, celebratory 5-year anniversary edition. So I've got a couple of more questions if I've got time to ask you. You've kind of talked about your guests and all the rest of it and your dream guest, and I say go for it. And I can't wait to listen to John Bishop. I can't pronounce the author's name, but I've got the book. And Agatha Christie, I don't think she's going to be coming on, is she, Gimo?
AI, she might come on with AI.
Don't mention AI. Gimo, don't mention the AI words. Not with Steve in the same room. So I want to imagine that a film is going to be made of three of you, collectively of your lives. And you can select the actor to play your part. Which actor would you choose to play you? Please say the one I'm thinking you're going to say, Steve, else I'm going to be crushed.
While those two are thinking, Sarah, I'll come in with what we nearly went with right at the start of the podcast is, as we ask guests to share Desert Island Drug, a career anthem and a book. Early on in the pilot episode, that was Steve wanted to ask people, if you were writing a book about your life, what would it be called? Which we decided was too taxing for our guests at that point. And so we just went with a book that's had an impact on you and your career. So
is this your polite way of saying that's too hard a question, Sarah?
No, not at all. The boys will have definite answers for that now, and I'll be thinking as they speak.
I haven't got one.
I've got one. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you'd want. But what I have are a very particular set of skills. I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you. So Liam Neeson, that's Brian Mills from Taken. And the reason why I say that is that when we went again to the RPS conference and we were talking about the Myers-Briggs, and I had a student a couple of years ago in our office, and she was saying that, oh, you know, you're Myers-Briggs. I said, oh yeah, I'm ESTJ. And she said, oh, but what's your character? You know, if you put it into either the Star Wars character or a Hollywood person. And it came out as Brian Mills, Liam Neeson from Taken. And first of all, I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But then actually, the more I realised that it probably was true. So there you go.
So you're going to have Brian Mills or Liam Neeson play you then? Liam Neeson will pay you.
Yeah. Sarah, you looked disappointed when I said that. Like you said, I hope you're going to come up with... Do you think I was going to say Alan Partridge?
Yes! Gimo, how about you? Who would play you?
I can't think. That's a really tough question. I'm trying to think of his name in. Do you remember the episode with Mark Porter was called "It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet"?
Yeah, James Herriot.
And there was a character in that called Tristan.
Oh yeah,
who was
Tristan
sort of
Farnham.
like,
Yeah.
the bumbling idiot who was trying to do his best but always getting in trouble. And I think that was probably my
Peter
20s. Peter Davidson.
Yeah, Doctor
there we
Who.
go. Yeah. And he was Doctor Who, so I'm a nerd as well, so it fits that. So there we go, Peter Davidson. That's the first name that came to my head, and I thought, no, I can't say that, was Clint Eastwood. And the reason I said Clint Eastwood is because he was my favourite actor, and I'd love to even imagine I'm a little bit like Clint Eastwood, but I'm not.
I think you're definitely more Peter Davidson than Clint
exactly,
Eastwood.
Exactly. There we go. That's quote of the show. More
I
Peter
love the
Davidson than
question.
Clint
Yeah,
Eastwood.
thank you. I love it. It's a real insight. I love this question.
Come on,
Jamie.
Hayes, you can't get off the hook.
No idea, really.
Really?
No idea.
This is what's called a lead balloon, isn't it? This
Never
is how
give
Do
it
you know what I'm
any
seeing when I look at you, Jamie? It's
Never
Toby
given it any
Jones.
thought. Who? Toby Jones. Thanks.
Short stature.
Not Toby Jones.
Played
Yeah.
Mr. Mannering.
Yeah.
Surely, from a voice point of view, you've got to be, what's his name from Would I Lie to You?
What, Richard Burton?
No, not Richard Burton, the other
No,
one.
Anderson. Thingy Anderson.
No, Rob Brydon.
Rob Brydon. Small man in a
he's
box.
much nicer
Yeah,
than
no.
Rob Brydon.
Okay, well, I'm going to go. He couldn't pick one himself, so I'm picking it for him. Rob Brydon, Liam Neeson, and Peter Davidson.
It would have been interesting if either of you had picked a female actress to play you.
Oh, sorry, Claire.
Anyway, last question. I want you to imagine it's not February the 2026, it's February 2027. I haven't disgraced myself as a host for your 5th anniversary, and so you've asked me back. So it's your 6th year. Okay? What have been the highlights?
So you said earlier about sponsorship. I don't think we fully answered that question. And I wouldn't have a dream sponsor, but what I've really enjoyed is some of the invites and offers and things that we've got to do things related to the pod. So it underplays it really. We've been to a couple of conferences. We've been abroad to do a couple of conferences. We spoke last month, 2 months ago, with Ben Goldacre in Oxford. And we did the live show. So I would hope that we'll have had a couple more. I mean, you guys are off to Canada, which is sort of related to this, but not quite. We're hopefully going to speak at least one conference, but I'd hope we'd have another couple of conferences in the bag. And I guess we're not looking for numbers, but we do think we've got something that's worth sharing here. And so my frustration would probably be that we don't get the numbers, and that's not spreading the learning. Not because we want the numbers for money or anything. So if we can say we've penetrated more into academia and also students and sort of stimulated some of those conversations more about medicines, that would be a good outcome for me in 2027.
I just want to add, I wasn't really clear on my instructions. So I want you to imagine that the year has already taken place. And so it's present tense, or kind of this is what has been achieved.
So I've just started reading Robert Watcher, MD, who wrote The Digital Doctor. That made a big impression on me when I used to work in medication safety around digitization of records. And he's just written a book called A Giant Leap, How AI is Transforming Healthcare and what that means for our future. And I think he would be an ace guest. And he actually he went on the Scottish podcast that I went on a few weeks ago. So he's obviously amenable to that. And as you know, I joke about AI, and I always say this, I don't want to come across as a Luddite. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm interested in it. But I will stick to my curious pragmatism. But I get the impression that that's what he's like. But that's just one guest that I would like to get on. And I agree with Gimmo in that if we could do more live shows. But I think we actually probably do need a proper strategy. We used to strategize a lot more, is what I would say, about what the next series would be. And actually, your question is now telling me that we need to strategize more about, for example, what Series 9 looks like, if indeed we decide that we're going to carry on.
So Steve's done what he's done throughout the 5 years there. Every now and then he brings us into line. He sort of gives us a little bit of a telling off, and And so I was looking at the WhatsApp group. So we have the WhatsApp group behind the scenes. So how many messages? So Jamie, you sent, since the WhatsApp group started, you've sent 6,046 messages. I've sent 6,390 messages. How many do you think you've sent, Steve?
Probably 3 times that, 18,000.
11,448, so twice as much. And you do a great job. You keep us in line, Steve. So he's the power behind the throne sometimes in organising us. And me and Jamie sometimes collectively roll our eyes, don't we, Jamie? But we knuckle down and get on with it.
And actually, that's something else there before I go on to Jamie. Two things really, but one thing that you've just said there, I think what really comes across to the listener is that you three gel so well. And I think, you've got this relationship that you've had for 5 years and it's still as strong, if not stronger than it was. So I think, that's definitely worth noting and congratulating you for as well. And STC, for you, I was at a conference on AI because I'm fascinated by AI. I'm also a little bit scared of it, but excited too. And it started off with a chart of the digital transformation, so the industrial revolution and the key stages. And AI is the 5th. They are predicting the 6th as being personalization. And that brings it back to your ethos and remit of your podcast, isn't it? It's about keeping that personality within the medicines arena. So, Jamie, I'll end with you.
So I just need to come back to Gimmo and check. Did you do the stats, Gimmo, on the other WhatsApp group, the one without STC?
Anyway, interestingly, there was 2,103 links, pictures, and documents. So we do the work. That all reflects. That's all the various stuff we share. But no, I did think about looking at. I'm in another group with Steve. He introduced me to a group with his friends where we talk about music, and I would say that it's probably the same ratio there.
It's a good point you've raised there. There's a lot of work that goes into this. It's not just about having an
all
hour
together
on.
Now. It's not just thrown together. We do a lot of preparation for this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. And so the learning has been incredible. It really has.
Well, I wanted to make the point before, but I think it's an important point is we take it seriously as well. Is we recognise that we are three pharmacists, and so we treat this as we would have in having a conversation with a patient, and we have changed a few things, and we discuss a lot sometimes about keeping things in and keeping out because we want to make sure that we don't say anything that will cause someone to take the wrong advice, if that makes sense. So that's part of the work that goes in afterwards as well.
Yeah, and that gets levelled up podcasts. So my own wife, who's a pharmacist, who never listened to the podcast. So why would she? Because I'm going on about it all the time, right? I don't blame her. But she always says, and she's not aiming at us, but she always says, but these people on podcasts, what do they know about the subject? Where's the guardrails in relation to what they're saying? So we do take it seriously, as Gimmo said. And if you go right back to the first episode, we talk about the fact that, look, if we just come on here and give you football coach answers to a question, what is the point in having the podcast? So we will push it, and we never mean to offend anybody, but sometimes in conversation, just like when you're in a pub, you will have some discussions that will take you somewhat into the margins. But we think that's what this is doing, and trying to be, we talk about edgy and lighthearted, and we try to do that. And I think that you have to prep to do that, and then you have to have the freedom to be able to say what you're thinking within those guardrails.
Excellent. Jamie?
Fast forward to February 2026, I would go along with Gimmo really on the conferences, but we've done conferences, as he says, London, Oxford, Bordeaux, Lisbon, and they've been great. We've done a couple in Cardiff, one at the Cardiff Science Festival, which was our first one. We also did one which was slightly different. We did the public performance really as well, which again, I think, we raised, £650, £700 for a local mental health charity and suicide charity, Big Moose in Cardiff. And I think that formula has got some legs, and it would be nice to roll out some more of those really as well. Not just healthcare professional. So and my public stuff I'm doing around Wales, which is in, and I've mentioned it several times, there's an appetite out there for it. Medicines have a huge impact on people's lives. That's what I'd love to see us try some more of.
I'd love you to do a live podcast with your U3A.
Yeah, there's definitely audiences out there.
Great. So that's all the questions from me. So I just want to say again, very well done. Keep up the absolute brilliant work. And for me as a layperson, I always appreciate it when there are so many acronyms and you take the time to explain what they are. So thank you for that.
The Oral Apothecary is sponsored by Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching and OneLessPill.com.
So, Sarah, we can't let you go without asking you the 3 questions. You know this is coming. And just to reiterate, the reason why we know Sarah is she's a friend of ours, but she happens to run her own podcast as well, has done since November 2021, originally called Big Balance Theory, now called Knowing You with Sarah Cripps. I can highly recommend it to people. It's about conversation, hence why she's so good at this stuff, and hence why we asked her to come on. But Sarah, you cannot go without giving the 3 things for the Oral Apothecary. So let's take them in the order, in the time-honoured fashion. What would you like to give us as your desert island drug?
Okay, so my desert island drug, and you literally gave me an hour's notice for this, but as a...
Let me stop you there, Sarah. You've had 5 years and 1 hour, okay?
Well said, Jamie.
People always tell us that, you know, if they're listeners, they say, oh, I know what mine would be. So, yeah, you failed really in that sense.
I do, yeah. The book's easy. The song's really easy, and I'll explain why. The song is really easy. So the drug would be, and I know I've asked you to pronounce it and I've forgotten already, but as a child, I had tonsillitis every month. And they wouldn't take them out. And then by the time I'd got to about 12 or 13, they said I was too old to have them removed. So the drug that I was always on, because I was allergic to penicillin, was
erythromycin.
Thank you. So that's my, and I've been quite lucky that I'm really quite a healthy person. So I think that's the only drug I've ever had to take. So yeah, very dull story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what about your career anthem then for the Oral Apothecary Spotify playlist? Because it really is on Spotify.
Okay, well, I really hope you haven't got this. So, you say about, your patients will say that, taking medication and being a patient is a second job. Well, for me, yes, I've got several career hats spinning, but for me, the best job is being a mom. And so I'm choosing a song that relates to my daughter, Jess. And when she was little, so we'd be in the car, and you used to have the cassettes in the car, and we'd have to have on repeat every time on the way to school, and this was primary school, and on the way back, and it was the Shoop Shoop song by Cher. I hope that's not on your list. Yeah. Is it in your eyes? So that was...
We haven't had Cher.
Whenever that comes up, great. I love to be first. I don't like to follow.
Okay, well, you can definitely have that, and that will sound
Thank
great.
you.
Love a bit of Cher. And what about the book then for the Oral Apothecary Library?
Okay, so the book. So, you know me, I absolutely love to read, and I particularly like nonfiction, but I love biographies. So the book that came to mind when you
asked you an hour
gave
ago.
me 5 years and 1 hour's notice of this book is a book called Elephant and the Twig. And it's by a guy called Jeff Thompson. And it's probably in the motivational sort of self-helpy books. But somebody gave me this book, and I'm going back about 20 years, and it tells the tale of how we've got self-limiting beliefs, how an elephant, when a baby elephant's born in kind of captivity, they put a twig around its, tie a twig, not cruelly, but around its leg, so it doesn't wander off. And then as the elephant, the baby elephant grows and grows and it's big, it's got the power and the strength to move forward, but it's got this twig attached to it. So psychologically, it doesn't think it can move forward and, change out of its own surroundings. So that really resonated with me at a particular time in my life. And the author, and so Jeff Thompson, I was in Leicestershire at the time. He was from Coventry. So I wrote to him and said, I'd love to come and have a coffee with you. You're not far away. And he did. And then he told me the story of how he worked in a factory. He always wanted to be an author. His dad said, don't be ridiculous. I think he worked in a car manufacturing plant, which makes sense, Coventry. And so because it was a blokey environment, and it would have been it wouldn't have been credible for him to say, "Oh, I'm writing a book." So every break he had, every lunchtime, he would go to the you know, the loos, and he would just write this book, and then he ended up having this book published. And then he then went on to write a play, and the play won a BAFTA about 10 years ago. So I like the fact that he wrote about chasing a dream and stepping over the boundaries. So,
do you know what, Sarah? You should ask him on your podcast.
Do you know, I should.
You should.
I should.
So,
I
The
should.
Elephant and the Twig, The Art of Positive Thinking by Jeff Thompson enters the Oral Apothecary Library. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Okay, thanks all. A big thank you to Sarah for joining us and hosting us on the Oral Apothecary, and for sharing her Desert Island Drug, her career anthem, and her book for the Oral Apothecary Library. So, 5 years of the Oral Apothecary. Thanks to all of our guests. Apothecaries 4 and 5, huge support from Claire and Jonathan, the team behind the team, you know who you are, and of course to you, our listeners. Thanks for all your support. Coming up next time, we're joined by Associate Professor Dr. Lena Frischlich from the Digital Democracy Centre, the University of Southern Denmark, as we explore the challenges of disinformation in healthcare. Join us next time on the Oral Apothecary. You have been listening to a 3 Apothecaries production. Sound engineer Jimbo Slough, original music Jamie Brewster, artwork by David Baker and Jacob Howard.
Thanks for listening to the Oral Apothecary podcast. Warning, may cause drowsiness if you don't listen with caffeine.
This episode of the Oral Apothecary is sponsored by jamiehayes.co.uk.